Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to be bringing you this conversation I had with Veronica Larsson in May 2021. She reached out to me by email and wanted to have a conversation with me about the research that I'd done on the heartstones. I recorded the conversation as well and got some footage that wasn't originally aired in the video when she put it up on her Odyssey channel. But I decided to include it here with her permission because the beginning of the conversation was fun, as there were a number of synchronicities that were related to our coming together to have this conversation. So I hope you all enjoy it, and please share it around and like and subscribe, and thanks and take care. Oh, one last thing. I've included her website and her Odyssey channel in the liner notes, so you can find her if you're interested.
Thank you for taking the time.
It's my pleasure. I saw you live. Do you live in Ojai?
No, I used to, but now I'm in Ireland.
Ireland. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if you realize it, but Ojai is my hometown.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's
I grew
amazing.
up there. In fact, I
Wow.
think I'd been in the restaurant you used to have. It's
Food
just
harmonic.
it's just before Rains, right? As you're heading down from the drugstore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the arcade there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's my hood. That's where I grew up.
really. That's what a synchronicity.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
are you Swedish?
yeah.
Ja, men
Swedish.
då kan vi
And
prata svenska om du vill hellre prata
ja,
svenska.
men herregud alltså.
Ja, vilken överraskning, eller hur? Att jag pratar svenska.
Hur kommer det sig?
Ja, jag bodde många år i Sverige. Mitt sambo, hon är svensk.
Ja,
Och jag flyttade till Sverige i 2001. Så jag gjorde hela
wow.
min utbildning för att bli chiropractor i Stockholm.
Wow.
That was
That's just
unexpected.
really, yeah. That's just incredible. Yeah.
Right.
Wow. And
So,
but you're in Spain now.
yeah, been here for
Yeah.
10 years and
Yeah.
moved from Sweden. Uh,
Yeah.
we were in Stockholm and then we were down in Kristianstad in Skåne and then we
Yeah.
moved here.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And were you in Ojai? I was just in Ojai. I opened that restaurant in 2016, and then I left in the summer of 2017.
Mm.
So,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
so you weren't there long.
No,
Mm.
I created it, and then things happened, and I left.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, long time ago. Um, I'm so excited to be speaking to you about the stones, and now I'm even more excited with all these we've intersected
Synchronicities.
countries. I'm I'm just going around all morning. There's just stones everywhere in my house.
Uh-huh.
I just thought, I just thought, will I show you a few of the ones that I found, and I might just show them as we're speaking,
Sure.
but you can just tell me if you think they're worth kind of showing in relation to
Mm.
like what you've discovered,
I
kind of
think
thing.
I think all the stones are interesting nowadays. A lot of people send me things and they're wondering what is this or what is that, as you know, and I'm anything but an expert on them. I do see them more and more as being biological in origin and
Yeah,
not in the way that the geology would tell us.
yeah, yeah,
um,
right.
yeah. How did
Yeah.
you come across my work?
Um, I think I think it was actually the stones themselves that clued me into a certain vibration. That's all I can say. Like I was just on the beaches, and I do like guided meditations, transmission stuff, like consciousness work, and I was photographing this at the beach, this cliff with all this soil coming into it, and the that just became the backdrop for what I call the Knowing Bones, a series of meditations.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was on the beach, I just started finding all of these stones, bringing them home, and just looking at them really like, this is not just a lump of rock. It's...
No, I would call that a heartstone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that
And
has probably, just from what you showed me there, that
yeah.
has about 7 or 8 of the features that I've shown in a number of the videos. You know, the tapering in and the flattened top, and there's a discoloration there that looks like the remains of the former blood vessels. The curved underside, because as it goes into contraction, there's a spiraling that happens, and then the backside either flattens or curves inward. So it's very specific. And there you've got it's also similar, and then the backside there. Oh, hold it up again.
Yeah.
The flattened backside also has a curved line there, which is the intraventricular sulcus. So those are very specific anatomical features, and it's amazing how frequently they reoccur.
And then I found a few that are
that
like
one's really meaty. Yeah, if you put that in water, it probably comes alive. Yeah.
Look, I have a water bath here just for illustration. I think we can have a look at a few of these when we're talking, but it's just like, look at that. Wow.
Yeah, and you can see the fatty marbling, and if you turn the front towards me, that's the top, and then turn the front, go back. So you got the fatty marbling, and then it looks like you've got the coronary sulcus there.
Yeah.
It's the reddish part that goes across. Just that's where the coronary artery would have run. So you got some good ones.
Yeah, I know. So that's how I was looking at the Michael Tellinger's work and the stone circles, and then somehow I came across your work.
Yeah, he had one video I saw after I'd already gotten on this subject, where he was showing the ringing stones, and then he was showing some of the mud fossils, and then he held up a petrified heart that had incredible detail, and I was like, wow, he's already on the subject. And he had gotten involved briefly with Roger from Mud Fossils University, and then they had a falling out, and Roger accused him, I think, of stealing his work, and also didn't like the fact that Tellinger had opened his mind to the flat Earth possibilities, and so that there was like an inseparable schism there. I like Tellinger. I like his approach. I've reached out to him a number of times over the last couple of years and never received any responses from him. So it's a shame because with his Mud Fossil Museum over there, the categorization of the stones that I've done is incredibly valuable to help people awaken to the possibility that some of the stones might be petrified organs. And and he was already on that topic before, but I wasn't familiar with his work, so it dovetailed beautifully. But even though I've reached out to his foundation, and I've sent things to a number of different emails. So when that happens, I start to wonder, like, have they really not come across the information, or is there some reason they're not addressing it? And sometimes I wonder if people worry that I'm trying to steal their thunder, but
it's so it's such a strange world now with everybody is like on the defense somehow. It seems it's a shame. I'll just show you this one, and then we can get started.
Sure.
I do have questions.
I just wanted to just do a little check here. Let me just see something.
There we are, recording. So Mike Wilkinson. Wilkerson. Sorry, that's terrible.
It's okay.
Yeah, Mike Wilkerson. Chiropractor and titanologist, I've heard you say, and maybe more than anything, just living, breathing, curious human being. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today and to share some of your work. We had a little chat earlier and found out that we've a few synchronicities from connections to Ojai in California and also in Sweden. So yeah, so I found your work looking at stones, and I found your video, the unveiling a Titan, which looks at a mountain in Spain where you are, Montgo, I think it's called, and then also videos about the heart stones and the anatomy of the heart. So yeah, so I wanted to reach out to you and see, can we have a look at some stones and explore what might be hidden in the soil that we walk upon here on this planet. So
and above.
yeah. Yeah. So you have a background in chiropody. Is that how you say it?
Chiropractic.
Chiropractic, yeah. And how what's your experience in working with the human body, and how the bones? So in the old times, you would have been a bone setter, yeah. And what's your experience in working with the human body and how it affects the health of a human?
Well, I grew up, you mentioned synchronicities, and there were several.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town in California where you used to live and own a restaurant I discovered today, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Called Ojai, and it's spelled Ojai. It's a Native American Indian word. And yeah, I grew up very alternative. My parents were hippies, but also very into health. And my stepfather was part owner in a health food store there in Ojai called Solar Winds. It's been long closed, but it was an amazing place while it was open. And health and nutrition and alternative lifestyles were always a part of my upbringing. A lot of people talk about going down the rabbit holes, but I suppose you could say I was raised in rabbit holes. Not because my parents were particularly interested in exploring conspiracies or anything like that, but just because by nature of who they were and what they were interested in, they lived lifestyles that were very, very different from all the other people around me. So I grew up vegetarian with a mother who was into yoga and astrology, and later became a book buyer for the local New Age bookstore, and and so I grew up with a very alternative upbringing. And then later on, I did some yoga as a kid and as a young adult, and read loads and loads of books on all kinds of subjects that had to do with philosophy and quantum physics and spirituality and mythology, and just tons of stuff. And so health and the body were always a part of my upbringing and became a part of who I was. And when I was in my 20s, I went on to study massage, and I studied Rolfing, or an offshoot of Rolfing known as Heller work, in Santa Barbara. So this very deep tissue massage where you're basically like a steamroller rolling very, very, very slowly over the muscles in order to break loose the hold that the fascia has on the muscle, so that the muscle can relax. Because a muscle that's chronically tense eventually loses, you lose that ability to consciously relax the muscle, and that leads to all kinds of different imbalances in the body. So I was really fascinated with the idea of being able to not just give people a massage that maybe felt good, but also do something that had a long-lasting beneficial effect on their body. And So I studied that, and in the course of that study, the man who was teaching us brought in all kinds of other little side things that integrated beautifully with the massage technique. Things like applied kinesiology, the use of muscle testing. We studied meridians. We were looking into the connection between emotions and somatization, which is when you actually physically manifest things that are a reflection of your emotional and mental body. And how to try and understand what those manifestations were and what the underlying causes were, so you could help to release them. And the massage was the biggest tool for that, but kinesiology was a way of kind of questioning the body and trying to get to the root of what was going on. And we learned about sound healing, and that tied into things like the rife and the different kinds of techniques that were being used, like with frequencies to heal, which are all considered to be pseudoscience and debunked by the mainstream. But when you dig into it, you find out that that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
And so I got into that in my mid-20s, working in Ojai. Was just living a nice life. Learned how to fly hang gliders and was surfing, and had and studying that on the side, and then started to work with it a bit, and I loved it. But what I didn't love was that most people just wanted the feel-good massage, and sometimes what they needed in order to start to go, to experience changes in their body were not necessarily the feel-good massages, but actually, going in a more intense way to try and break up that long-standing tension that they were holding and make them aware of that. So after a while, I became frustrated because the people who needed it most weren't interested in that. They just wanted you to give them a rub down. And I felt like, wow, that just kind of puts me on par with, almost like prostitution, or they're paying me money to make them feel good. And I was more interested in healing and helping them to reach new, milestones in their life and their development.
Yeah.
So I kind of took a break from it. The job I had at the time was great because I could work almost part-time and have a lot of free time and money to have fun and pursue these other interests. And then I moved up to Seattle for a second time. I lived up there for a while with a girlfriend and left the body work behind, moved back to California, eventually went back to school. My mother had always encouraged me to get a degree, so I chipped away at junior college for a while. And then after I got enough credits that I could transfer to the University of California at Santa Barbara, I went to an education abroad program and went and studied in Italy. So there's been a lot of different chapters in my life that all kind of interlock. Living in Italy, I lived there twice for a total of 3 years. I was a student initially, and then I moved back, taught English, and worked in IT. And my first visit to Italy was when I met my partner, who's a Swede, and she and I were together for off and on for a few years, and then eventually in 2001, shortly before 9/11, moved to Stockholm, and our daughter was born a few months after that. So it was a very, very intense time because I left a great job in IT in Rome to move to Sweden, and I got there literally the same week that the IT bubble burst. And I already knew at that point, after a year of working at IBM, that I didn't want to devote the rest of my life to sitting in front of a computer, because I was a people person and I wanted to have a direct impact on people's lives and not just be working on software, documentation, or something like that. So I already knew that I didn't want to continue doing what I was doing, but with the family on the way and a need to support ourselves, that was my plan initially, and I figured just to see where it would lead me to. But I got there literally the same week that the IT bubble burst, and all of these IT companies like Boo.com, and it was the big bust of 2001, and then 3 years later 9/11 hit. So that was a major time of change for the whole world at that point. And our daughter arrived a few days after 9/11. And so I'd been out of work because of the bubble bursts, and I was trying to come to terms with what I wanted to do with my life, and I went back to teaching English. So there I was, how old was I at that point, like 32, 33 or something, and trying to figure out how to make a living in a country where I didn't even speak the language at that point, and with a daughter, so I went back to teaching English with constant in my mind of what am I going to do when I grow up? You know, I'm already a dad, and that was when I slipped and I wrenched my back on the ice in Stockholm, and was in a lot of pain, and went to a chiropractor who just did a single adjustment, and it was like, wow, it was a major change. My mom had tried to push me in the direction of chiropractic 10 or 15 years before that. Especially with all of my background in massage and kinesiology, it was a logical step to go in that direction. But the teacher that I'd had in Santa Barbara had really turned all of us off to the idea of chiropractic, and had basically filled us with a number of misconceptions about the profession that weren't based on fact or reality, but were assumptions that he had made about the nature of what chiropractors were doing and what was actually happening when the adjustment took place. I mean, he had us believing that the popping that's happening in the spine when people are moving the spine is literally bone on bone, and that the more that occurs, the more that the structures are being worn out, and it gets to a point where it's impossible for a person to hold the adjustment. Yeah. And if you know anything about the anatomy and the physiology of the joints, you know that that's actually impossible, because there's all kinds of cartilage and there's joint fluid and there are all these things, and it's not bone on bone. So that was a pretty major misconception that just caused me to you know, discount chiropractic for a very long time. And I had a close friend who was a chiropractor who worked in Ojai, and he was a friend of the family, and he had adjusted me a couple times. Once after I had a pretty nasty hang gliding launch, and but it wasn't some magic like, wow, I went from feeling like crap to feeling immediately better right afterwards. So it wasn't, there was no connection. But this time in Stockholm, that definitely happened, and I felt like, whoa, this guy, you know, I mean, it was pretty funny, because a friend of my girlfriend's was studying chiropractic in Bournemouth at the time in England, and her boyfriend, the two of them were like top students in their class, and it was a very big chiropractic college, and they had come over to Stockholm for Christmas, and we were standing in a clothing store where my girlfriend worked, and I had this neck that wouldn't turn because I had slipped on the ice, and like I didn't fall, but I caught myself, and it was like, ah, and it was like I had like no rotation to the left and full rotation to the right, and I asked him, you think you might be able to help me with this? And he ended up taking a sweater off of the rack and rolling it up, and he had me standing up against the wall and got me in this position. He went thunk, and all of a sudden I had like full range of motion and no pain, and I went, whoa. And my next thought was, can you make money as a chiropractor? You know, it was like, that was where my head was at that point. But you know, it was a really amazing aha experience. And then about a month later, after they had already gone back to Bournemouth, that was when I had the slip on the ice, and I wrenched my lower back. And so I was like, oh, I wish you guys were here so you could help me. And they ended up giving me the name and number of a friend of theirs who was a chiropractor in Stockholm, who later went on to become one of my best friends. And I started getting adjusted. And that was when I started thinking, maybe there's something that I should, you know, be looking at here and consider as a profession.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until
maybe your
I don't know,
maybe your soul slipped on the ice.
Right. I think you know, like, oh, he's not going where we want him to. Let's give him a little push. You know?
Yeah.
So I think about a year later, we went on a trip back to California, to Ojai, to visit my family and stay there. And it was a very interesting thing where I had developed on the flight over, I had developed heartburn, you know, acid reflux. And I'd never had that before, except for maybe like a brief moment or something. But this lasted, it came on while I was towards the end of the flight, and it lasted for about 7 to 10 days. And it was 24 hours a day. I had this burning sensation. It didn't matter what I ate, what I drank. And so finally I was over with my friend who was the chiropractor, and I said, you know, I don't know what's going on. I've never had this before. And he said, he started to describe how based, like oftentimes when people are sitting with poor posture and they're slouching, they're literally pushing their stomach upward, and that can start to press up against the esophageal sphincter, and it causes it to dilate a little bit, which can allow the hydrochloric acid that's in the stomach to leak up and start to irritate the lining of the esophagus. And I was like, oh, that sounds like an interesting theory. And he said, well, there's an adjustment for it. If you'd like, I can try it. And I was like, an adjustment? And it was basically, it wasn't a chiropractic adjustment in the sense that it's moving bones. It was a soft tissue manipulation. Mm-hmm. But we timed the breathing where I took a deep breath, and on the exhale, really rapidly, he yanked downward in the diaphragm area. And he did this 2 or 3 times. And in about 30 seconds to a minute, the burning, which I had had for 10 days straight, went away entirely. And that was when I was just like, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And I turned to my partner and I told her that, and she said, I think you're right. And so then when we went back to Stockholm, I started looking into it, and all of my friends were suggesting a school in Bournemouth. And I went through this incredibly long application process, and because I wasn't a native to Sweden, that complicated things, and then eventually was approved to go to the school. And we flew there with our son. We had 2 kids at that time. Our son was in the stomach, and our daughter was back at home with the grandparents. And so on the return to Stockholm, there was a letter of rejection from CSN, the financial aid authorities in Sweden, because they had assumed, when they approved my initial inquiry and said that it would be no problem, they had assumed that I meant as part of a Swedish education, but it was actually the full 5 or 6 year education that I was planning on doing in England. And since I wasn't a Swedish citizen at the time, they rejected it. So all of a sudden I was floundering, like I finally figured out what I want to do and I can't do it. And it turned out that there was a school in Stockholm that I was unaware of. And so looked into that one, and next thing I knew, I was starting chiropractic college, and our second child, my son, was about 3 months away from being born. So there I was, 32, something like that, and starting over, and having to learn a whole new language as well, because the first year and a half I'd been there, I was an English teacher, so I spoke very little Swedish, and it was sink or swim. So my first year, it was like full-blown university level Swedish, and thankfully a lot of the medical literature is in English, and the textbooks, a lot of them were in English. So, and because I had studied Italian and was fluent in Italian, most of the medical literature is Latin based. So I intuitively grasped a lot of things. So the Swedish came on really, really quick. And, the first year I was there with my Swedish English dictionary, and I was the slowest person in all the tests. And then by the end of the second year, I had sped up a lot, and towards the end of the education, I was, fully fluent and did very well. So that's kind of like my journey to chiropractic. And one interesting part of that was that my friend in California, who was the chiropractor, when he found out that I was going to school to become a chiropractor, he sent me, my mom came to visit, and she brought this box of tapes and CDs that were part of a chiropractic organization that released 3 CDs every month, one on philosophy, one on science, and one on the art, philosophy, science, and the politics, of chiropractic. So each CD dealt with the different ways in which the current events within research and within the world were tying into and related to chiropractic, but it was all with a very vitalistic angle. And what I didn't know when I started chiropractic is that the profession itself had very esoteric roots. The man who founded the profession was a magnetic healer initially. And then there's a lot of people within those early days of chiropractic that were part of the spiritualist movement. And there's a whole series of books, I think there's like 50 of them or more, which are known as the Green Books. And these people were prolific writers, and they were very, very deep into the occult, but not in a dark way, but into the esoteric aspects of how the body functions. And the more I learned about all of that, which I knew nothing about, I just thought of it more like a physiotherapist that manipulates the bones. That was my idea of chiropractic. And since I had firsthand experiences with the benefits of it, I I didn't question its value as a modality, but I was completely unaware that chiropractic tied into literally everything that I was interested in, that I had been studying from my teens through my 20s, ideas that I had grown up with, and that it was like integrating philosophy, and it was integrating the newest sciences and what we understood about energetics and magnetics and quantum physics and all these things into a profession that had an ideology that was vitalistic and also presented me with a technique that I could use to actually impact people directly in their bodies. And when I had that realization, I came to tears, because it was like, I've found it. This is what I've been looking for my whole life. So, and then I started chiropractic college, and one of the first courses we had was a chiropractic history course. So we were studying the anatomy and just like hitting the books big time, learning all the muscles and things that it was a review for me, because I'd studied so much for the massage course. And then when they started to get into the old time chiropractic and the books and all these things that I had so excitedly learned about in the CDs that my friend had sent me, they were talking about it in a derogatory fashion, as if we have come so far since then, and we no longer believe all this psycho mumbo jumbo babble, that's completely not based on science. And they had a very square, typical cerebral Swedish approach to everything, but we're missing the big picture. And so I was there from day one, year one, like constantly the one saying, but what about, and so it was a very interesting intro to the profession and to the education. That was a very long-winded answer to your question, I hope.
No, it's brilliant. It paints such a multifaceted background to your own being and how you understand the world. I think that when I've been looking at the videos that you've done, which I link to in the description to this video for those that want to go and explore more. But when I've looked at those, and also when I've listened to another couple of interviews, what struck me most, in this day and age, people are very quick to have to categorize things and say, this is true, this is not true, it's like this, it's like that. But I can just, in your work, I can just feel you there, your curiosity, and you're applying your own intelligence, and that is coming from the inside. And I'm just, when you were talking there about when you got the esophagus pressure adjustment, esophagus, that there's to work on that level with human beings, you have to be able to hold the space that they get to after the adjustment, right? So you can't just manipulate bones from the outside and then just leave the human hanging in a completely new space. Right. It's you have to be able to be on the inside with your consciousness. You have to be able to hold them in consciousness. That's what I'm kind of
energetically, but also from a knowledge standpoint when it comes to education. And I see half of my job as being education. The other half is the adjustment, the investigation, and then the adjustment. Because if you don't educate people and help them to understand the different things that they're doing, both physically but also perhaps mentally and emotionally, that are causing them problems, then you're essentially a band-aid. And this gets back to what I was saying about the massage, is that if you're not helping them to progress and evolve in their thinking and their consciousness, then they're just going to continue doing the same things they've been doing. Problems will return, and then they'll end up thinking, well, chiropractic didn't work for me, and they don't realize that, well, maybe it was working, but you're going back and making poor choices and undoing the good work that was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I resonate with that. That's how because I was teaching yoga classes for many years, and then just noticing that people, yeah, it's like you come, you feel better for a while, but it didn't actually get to the place where the deep transformation can take place. So I've changed my work throughout the years to just work in a different place so that people can go to that place. But
BJ I'll just add, BJ Palmer, who was the son of the founder of chiropractic, the first book was written, I believe, in 1895. That, you know, the first adjustment given around that time. But obviously, bone setting, as you alluded to before, is very old, and it goes back to even to Hippocrates, who you know, 400 years before Christ said, if you want to understand the nature of disease, look first to the spine. It doesn't mean the spine is the cause of all disease, but if there's problems with the spine, with the alignment, and with the movement, then that by definition is going to interfere with the flow of information through the nervous system. And the nervous system is the master controller of the body. So anything that inhibits that flow of communication in either direction, from the brain to the cells or the cells to the brain, is by definition going to diminish our function in our, you know, in our bodies. So B.J. Palmer, the son, who was really the proponent who moved the profession forward and, you know, wrote so many of those books I mentioned before, someone once asked him, what is the primary thing that determines whether someone is going to get well when you start to engage with them in an intervention? And he says, it depends upon the liver. People are like, okay, the liver, you know, yeah, well, okay, that's a very important organ, you know, for detoxing and you know, but they were like, but what about all the other things? The liver's just one part of it all, you know. How can that be the most important factor? And he said, no. It depends on the liver, the one doing the living. Right, and that's really where the education aspect of it comes in. And some chiropractic, you're talking about holding that space after the adjustment. Some chiropractic offices work in an open room. Now that allows them to adjust and see more people. So then it's like a conveyor belt kind of adjustatorium sort of an environment, and that's sometimes criticized because they're just trying to adjust as many people as possible and make a lot of money. But it's also a great setting because people have a chance to relax before the adjustment and to relax after the adjustment and get up when they're ready, you know, so the adjustment is performed. But then it's not like, okay, get up from the table and go about your day, and, you know, and it's like, whoa, you know, what was that just happened? I don't even know, and they can't integrate it and process it. And unfortunately, to work that way, you have to have assistants, you need a bigger space, and I like to keep my life as simple as possible so that I have time to get myself into trouble with other pursuits. And so I've opted for a much different approach to it. But you know, I talk with the people a lot, and I'm trying to, you know, get into a little bit what's going on in their life and what might be influencing, and what are the factors that are part of what's going on with them.
I can see the value in having a lot of people in the same room, though. Actually, it's what.
Oh yeah, there's a definite synergy that occurs,
I call it file sharing. It's like on a skill level, like I see this in women's circles all the time. It's like whatever aspects are healed in some people are not healed in others, and as you start to open, the whole field starts to resonate. So that
there's an entrainment that occurs, and it's like a school of fish, you know. There's like, they're all turning simultaneously. It's not one that's like, okay, we're going to turn now, you know. It just happens. And so that is an aspect of it, and that's one of the benefits of this other format.
Yeah, great. So that gives us a good background to, like, you have a good understanding of anatomy and those kinds of things. So what was your first kind of prompt, or what caught your attention first about when you started looking at Montgo?
Well, yeah, there's a whole series of different events, and exposures to different ideas that led to the first kind of like, could it be question, you know? And I was in addition to being interested in philosophy and quantum physics and all these other things, I was a big time space junkie, you know, growing up, and loved Star Wars and Star Trek, and, you know, read all the different magazines that were talking about the latest discoveries and where it was all going. And so many years ago, I came across the idea that maybe the moon landings didn't happen, and that NASA wasn't exactly always telling us the truth. And so that's a big rabbit hole to go down for those that haven't done it, because as you go down it, you start to find that there's a lot of funny business that's taking place, and there shouldn't be. It shouldn't. I mean, if the things that they claim to be doing are really being done, there should be incredible footage of a lot of things that there isn't incredible footage of. So that's the first thing is diving down different rabbit holes that lead you with the conclusion that things may not be exactly as we've been taught to believe when it comes to the nature of our physical reality. And that, you know, you can talk for days and months about all of the different subjects that ties into. And then, having gone down those different paths and studying things, I came across a lot of different ideas that tied into geology, for example. A lot of revisionistic geology, where people are looking at supposed claims that have been made throughout the years about what they know about the age of things, and how the different dating techniques, and kind of like what we're experiencing in today's world with matters pertaining to health. You find out that the dissenting voices for each of those theories that we now are taught to take as fact were silenced, and that the debates never actually occurred, and that when you dig into the supposed debunks to alternative theories, what you find is that there's a lot of fallacious reasoning, and that they're attacking the messenger, and they're straw manning, and they're not actually going after the salient arguments when it comes to these kinds of things. And, you know, you see this in matters of health, you see it in politics, you see it in economy, you see it everywhere you turn. You can find, you know, every rock you pick up, there are creepy crawly things under it, you know. And so I think it's best to take everything with a grain of salt. And I've always been like this selective sifter when I'm going around, and I've always just intuitively wanted to look for the overlaps in things, because I felt that was where there was more likely to be truth. But it's also because of my upbringing, as far as my parents and their spiritual and religious beliefs growing up. They're very much believing in Eastern philosophies, and you know, I had a grandmother who was Christian, and a lot of the people in Ojai can be very conservative in their thinking. So I always just intuitively felt like each of the world's religions and philosophies contain grains of truth, but there was no corner on the market when it came to truth. And so the best thing is to take a syncretic approach to that. And that's a term that I learned from Santos Bonacci, Mr. Astrotheology, several years back, that really looks at the overlaps between all of these different things. And I was interested a lot through my late teens and 20s in the works of people like Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung, and looking at cross-cultural comparisons, and looking at mythologies and how similar themes are reoccurring over and over again. So that's always kind of been my approach. And so tying that back into geology, I'm open to giving any idea its day in the sun until it reaches a point where it's just like, this is ludicrous, the person isn't making any sense, there's no logic behind this reasoning. But having said that, many of us grow up in a way that I call paradigm blind, right? We are blind to certain objective, empirical, observable realities because we have beliefs about what we are seeing that have been instilled in us from the time that we were kids.
Yeah.
And that's especially true of geology. It's especially true of cosmology when you dig into it, that there are certain things that I call the unquestionables, the things that you're really not allowed to question, about the nature of our reality.
Yeah.
And I don't like to limit myself in that fashion, but I think we should all be open-minded, but not so far that we open our brain and our brain falls out.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to your question. That was a long intro to the. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just interject with something just came to me there when you said about like we can't see things that because we haven't been taught to look at things in a certain way because of conditioning or beliefs, like from a young age or whatever was kind of in our families. But I think the kind of reflecting on how things are going in the world now, I think the same applies to love. It's most humans learned conditional love. So something that actually wasn't nourishing or nurturing of the child because the like the response that the child got that maybe wasn't nurturing, that gets translated or inverted into, that means love. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I just wanted to put that in.
And that ties into codependence and Stockholm syndrome and all kinds of different ideas.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I think open-minded is good, but not so much that we just buy and believe everything that comes along. There's also a tendency in a lot of people towards a nihilistic view on things, that nothing matters. It's all relative. Einstein's relativity kind of throws us all into this universe that's, it's like all these different ideas about space-time and expansion, and you're just a speck of dust on an infinitely small speck of dust in an infinitely large universe that nothing, after a while, nothing matters, and that leads people towards a more like Epicurean, debaucherous sort of lifestyle, because I'm just going to get mine. I'm going to get what I can while I can and enjoy life, because who knows, it might all be over afterwards. But it also leads to this very wishy-washy way of viewing reality, where everything is relative, and it all depends on what you think and how you feel and what you're putting out there. And that's true on some level, because we're all operating in the etheric realm also, as well as the physical realm. But I think it causes people to discount that there is a physical reality that we're living in that's empirical, that can be observed and tested. And we're all using devices, like we're communicating through devices that have all been created based on all the knowledge about this empirical world, but it's also tying in a load of esoteric knowledge as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people throw out the baby with the bathwater, and they end up with this real, new agey philosophy that's like nothing matters except expressing my individuality to the maximum and manifesting my potential. And it can be very egotistical, and it can be very just out there and floating around.
I love how the body, like the body is always, you can have all the beliefs in the world, and then when your body has something to say, then you really have to listen. Like I had
there's a podcast guy named Crow777, CRROW777.
Yeah, he's great.
And one of his favorite lines is that belief is the enemy of knowing.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. If you understand that, well, you might be paradigm blind. You might have a whole set of beliefs that lead to you looking at the world in a particular way and making decisions based on those beliefs. And then when your intuition kicks in, you assume that your intuition is right, but maybe your intuition is based on a whole set of false beliefs that have never necessarily been proven. So I think intuition is a real slippery one as well, because, you know, some people are out there just like they believe they can trust their intuition 100%, but your intuition can be wrong if you have a whole bunch of beliefs that are not based on reality whatsoever. So, and that gets back to the whole question of geology. And there were about 5 or 6 different YouTube channels that I was looking at content from that were touching on geology in different ways. The first idea being the concept of mud fossils, and that fossilization as we know it, which we're told takes millions and millions of years to happen, can actually happen in a very brief amount of time given the right conditions. And mud fossil theory suggests that the right conditions are encased in mud. So if you have flesh, you know, which normally would not fossilize, bones will fossilize, we're told. They find skeletons of all kinds of different creatures, but soft tissue, except in very, very rare circumstances, we're told cannot fossilize, because the larvae and the bacteria that eat away at the flesh have you know, long eaten away at the flesh before it would ever turn to stone. The anaerobic environment that's set up by the mud, in other words, if you encase something in mud, those bacteria and larvae can't thrive. And then there's an exchange that occurs between the water and the gases in the tissue and the minerals that are in the surrounding mud. And so that is a slow exchange that happens over a long period of time. It's known as paramineralization. And we see that with petrified trees, right? We see it with different known fossils that exist. There's pine cones that you can find in Argentina, and there's crabs that are called concretions, that are just like trapped in these little spherical balls, you know, and they're complete. So there are examples in the fossil record of this occurring, but we're told it happens over millions and millions of years. And that fits in with the cosmological model that we're given, with dinosaurs getting destroyed 65 million years ago by asteroid strikes, and all of these things that we can never confirm for ourselves because they're happening over impossibly long timelines, and you can't observe or witness, and you can't set up any kind of scientific experiment to prove it. I mean, they do have scientific instrumentation and different things that they use for the dating of things, but when you dig into carbon dating and you dig into the use of layers of strata, for example, as a dating technique, you find out, like I was alluding to before, that a lot of those supposed claims that this is settled science, it's not really settled science, and that there were hot debates, and then eventually one side of those debates was silenced, and they said, no, we're just going with this one. And then that filters into academia, and then eventually people are receiving prizes for their discoveries, and you know. So mud fossil theory was one that got me onto the topic of mud flood, because there are a lot of channels that were talking about something that I had never thought of or heard of, which is that there was major flooding that happened across the realm that deposited huge amounts of mud everywhere, and that all of the evidence of this is hidden in plain sight, and we're just never told that something like that could have happened. I mean, the Christians are ahead of the game in some ways, because they're believing in the Bible as the letter of God, and so there are all these things that the Bible talks about, the great flood of Noah, and you know, you've got the petrification, Sodom and Gomorrah, and there are all these what I thought were allegories in the Bible that may actually be historical retellings of things that actually occurred. And so that was never something that I really gave much concern to. And I to this date, I've never actually gotten through the Bible. I keep getting about a third of the way through, and then life gets in the way, you know. So it's kind of fascinating that the research that I've done and the things that I've discovered and presented on my channel, in a lot of ways, are confirmations of many of the things that the Christians have as their core beliefs in their faith. And a lot of the people who follow my channel are Christians. So it's kind of this unusual dichotomy where, through observing empirical reality and trying to make sense of the things that I was witnessing and seeing in my everyday life here where I live, I was coming across stuff that didn't make sense based on what I had known about geology. And I had basic geology courses when I was younger. I've studied a bit of physics, and I've studied a bit of chemistry. I've studied a lot of anatomy. I've studied histology, which is the study of tissues and the makeup of tissues. But I'm not an expert in any of those things. I'm more of a cross-disciplinary field researcher that has dipped into a lot of different things, has studied academically at a high level. I have a bachelor's in philosophy. Basically, it's well, it started as philosophy and then went on to be an Italian cultural studies degree, because I wanted a classics degree, but UCSB didn't offer something like that. I wanted to, dip into lots of different aspects of life, and then a science degree in chiropractic. So I studied the scientific method a lot, and I had to do a master's thesis and research project as part of that education. So I don't try and present myself as an expert, but I am a person who's studied a lot of these things and has a lot of knowledge and can see when there's things that don't make sense. And so a couple of the other threads that I was studying that before I started to make my first forays into this topic were different videos that were undermining major cornerstones of the geological narrative, in my opinion, and oftentimes using geology's own words, like key players within the field of geology who had historically said different things. And that was fascinating, because all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe things are not as they appear. And then I had the mud fossil thing to look at, and then I had the mud flood thing, and the amount of evidence for the mud flood, not the mud flood, because there may have been many different mud floods, and it may have happened at different times in different places. I mean, mud volcanoes are just an established geological fact. You can see video of them spewing out mud in huge quantities. And if you look at the Ring of Fire and all the different volcanoes that exist around the world, you have some that are spewing out lava, many that are spewing out mud, and those are in the hundreds or thousands, but it's estimated that they're in the millions underwater. So there's all kinds of things going on with volcanoes that most people are completely unaware of.
Yeah. And
then you have the super volcanoes as well that they talk about, the calderas, that when they blow, it's like a reset for the whole world. So it's like, have there been resets in recent times? And when I say recent, I mean in the last couple of 100 years that we haven't been taught about, that aren't in our school books, that are unequivocally proven. And I would say, based on all the research I've done now in the last several years, the answer is yes. There's unequivocal evidence that much of what we thought about our past, our history, about geology, about a variety of different subjects is either just wrong because people made mistakes, or they're flat out lies, or they're misinterpretations. And so I decided to just take a step back and start looking at the rocks around me with different eyes. And the last little puzzle bit was a video that I saw by a guy named Jay Dreamers, who's this guy from California I don't know if he's from there, but he was living in Colorado at the time, and he's got a fun channel. He's kind of a younger guy that dips into everything far out you can imagine. And his video is called Petrified Titans. And he was talking about mud fossil theory, and he was talking about all the evidence of different forms of petrification of things that we're taught shouldn't petrify. And then he was also dipping into the mythologies and looking at what do the different religions, what do the different myths around the world say about gigantic creatures, like not just giants, but titans, like in the form of Clash of the Titans. You've got the Greek mythology of Perseus cutting off the head of Medusa and turning the crack into stone. That's one of many, many different myths. We've got Paul Bunyan and Gulliver from Gulliver's Travels, and you've got the Cthulhu, and you've got, you name it. There's a ton of stuff out there. And he was looking at all of that and looking at the overlaps and looking at it with a very syncretic approach and tying that into mud fossils. And then he showed a number of pictures in that video of things that, two of them in particular. One was an island in Hawaii that's out in the water, and when you see it from any angle, it looks like an elephant. Not just one angle. That's very important, because a lot of people are taking pictures of mountains, and like in Ojai, there's Chief's Peak, right? And it looks like an Indian laying on its back, and it's got it's got a face and a nose and everything. And I grew up looking at that mountain. Well, I never for a moment considered like, oh, Chief Peak might have actually been a giant Indian. You know, it's like that would have been ridiculous, you know, but I always loved the mountain.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are suffering from what is known as pareidolia, where they're, you know, you look at a cloud and you see a face, you see a dragon, you see these things. Well, that's just a natural part. And people who are more creative and musical, they have this ability to see these things that maybe other people don't see, but it doesn't mean they're real and that they're there. It's just a trick of the mind, you know, a pattern recognition for pattern that isn't there.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I talk about a lot in my videos is how often people are seeing things and making steadfast claims about the veracity of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And they haven't actually even looked at the mountain from other angles or looked at whatever it is they're talking about and done comparisons with known anatomy and things like that.
Yeah.
So there's this island.
That's what you've done with the mountain and also with the heart. You actually gone and looked at the.
I didn't set out to make videos on the craziest topic you could possibly come up with. In fact, I know a lot of people who are flat earthers, and people have told, you know, made comments on my channel, this guy makes even the flat earthers look smart. Like I'm the stupidest guy out there, you know, in their mind, because I'm even willing to consider such ridiculous possibilities for even a moment.
Mm.
There was another picture in the J-Dreamers video, which was of a place in Iceland. I don't remember the name of it, but they're going by on a boat, and this looks like it's a mountain that looks like an elephant from a variety of different angles, and it's got the eye, and it's even got the skin texture and everything. And so I saw those two, and I just went, wait a minute, hold on a second here, because I'd already been primed with these other videos, questioning geology and mud fossils, and then also Roger, this guy from Mud Fossil University, every third video he does is on this dragon that's in the Sahara Desert that's talked about in mythology. Plato talks about it, even describes its location and describes this great battle between the Leviathan and the Behemoth that's, you know, written about in texts from 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And so Roger's, you know, on Google Earth in, you know, 3D mode and zooming around and pointing out all the anatomical features, and I was like, wow, this is pretty far-fetched, you know, a 900-mile long dragon, you know, and so I just took that all with a grain of salt. But I was very fascinated by the mud fossil research, and he knew a lot about the chemistry and was going through and comparing, doing anatomical comparisons, and I was watching it, and I was like, he actually makes a lot of sense with a lot of this stuff. He may not be right about everything, and my suspicion is that he isn't, because he's one of these people that comes off as knowing it all and 100% certain of everything he's describing, and I always, you know, kind of back away from those kinds of characters. But there was enough there that I didn't want to throw out his ideas. And then when I saw this stuff with J-Dreamers, and this is when it ties into the here and now, where the town that I live in Spain, there's a mountain here called Montgo that you named before, that from the side looks exactly like an elephant lying on its stomach. And there's a cave exactly where the eye would be, and the tapering, you know, coming down. There's a plateau right where the front limbs and the trunk would be. And I was just like, there's no way this could no, it's just, no, this is just too silly, you know. And so I got on Google Earth, and you know, you can tilt Google Earth so that you can look at things in 3D, and I'm zooming around, and I'm like, it doesn't just look like it from one angle, it looks like it from a bunch of different angles. And then I realized that there's a canyon that I'd hiked up half a dozen times that goes right up between the middle of the two legs. That's this very deep, narrow canyon.
Yeah.
And the eye was exactly where it should be, and it was even shaped like an eye socket, and there's a ridge line, and then I started getting some pictures of elephant skulls online, and I'm like, holy moly, it's like it's lining up, you know, way too much. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So after those first couple hours of looking at it and comparing to anatomy, I already had like 10 or 12 different anatomical features, like macro features. And I had been at the eye on several occasions hiking up there, and I've hiked all over this mountain. I've lived here for 10 years now, and I know the mountain. I've spelunked in the caves, and the eye of Montgo is incredibly fascinating because it's very, very unusual geologically when you get up in there. There are all these little channels going back in different directions, and there was this one cave that I went into with friends on a couple of occasions where you literally have to shimmy through on your stomach or on your back about like 10, 15 feet, and then it opens up into a big cavern. So basically that would be where sinuses would be. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. You have eye socket. And then I thought, okay, I've studied enough anatomy to know that the eye socket of vertebrates has about 7 different bones that attach in different places to make up the eye socket. You have the frontal bone, you have the maxilla, and then, you know, inside there are these different channels that permit the flow of the nerves and the blood vessels, and then you've got the attachment of the muscles for the eye to be able to move, and so I was like, wow, there was so much unusual about that cave structure, and I was just like, I wonder, you know, and I thought, okay, this is where I'm going off the deep end with pareidolia, and I don't want to do that, and I'm not going to start to share information with people about the most ridiculous idea that somebody could come up with. So I'm going to really research this in depth and take it seriously. So I wanted to apply the scientific method to the best of my ability. Now, a true scientific method requires some form of experimentation. You have to have a manipulable variable. You have to be able to isolate all the different factors so that you can determine what the outcome of your experiment is. That's empirical. It's here and now, and that's how you go about discovering and improving different things. That, you know, you can't do that when you already have something that's already done, so to speak, right? Yeah. So then it's more of a, well, if it were that, what would I expect to find? And so I got out the anatomy books, got online, looked at the skulls of elephants from inside and out. I found video footage. I found 3D models that I could manipulate, just looking at all these different, very specific anatomical features that are related to the eye socket of vertebrates. And I had a long list of things that I would expect to be able to find if there was any kind of a correlation. And so I went up with that list in mind, again, to take a look with new eyes, with mud fossil eyes at this cave. And within a couple of hours, I'd already found about 10 or 12 different direct anatomical correlations. And some of them are very specific, like really specific. And so already, after that first macro view of looking at the mountain from above, and then this venture into the eye again, I had a list of almost 20 different specific anatomical correlations, which are already getting into the level of absurd for me. Like, it's one thing to just say, oh, it looks like an elephant, and oh, there's a cave, just happens to be right where the eye is. You know, how fun. That's pareidolia. It's so cute. I love that the mountain looks like an elephant. Yeah. You know, I've always had a fond place in my heart for the elephant, you know, but I never sought out to try and convince people it really was, you know, that would be stupid, you know. So that was when I really started to dive into it more, and I started to tell friends about it, and they're like, you got to make a video about this. This is amazing. And this was before I'd made a single video. And the first video I made was an overview. It shows the research. I show a list of, at that point, it was like, I don't know, 45 different anatomical and histological correlations. That's a big number. Now we're getting into odds, right? Yeah. What are the odds? And it's like rolling the dice. I can roll double sixes. That's a 1 in 36 chance. What are the odds of me doing it again? Is it 2 times 1 in 36? No, it's like every time you add some new specific thing to the list, the odds of that being the case are greater and greater. Yeah. And so then I started to organize the data that I had, and I was thinking about making videos, and that first video was an overview of the different things that I had planned. And and then showing this list. And then the second video was about the eye, which is I have photographic and video footage up and in the eye. I'm showing it next to 3D anatomy, and you know, really went deep and thorough into it. And then I started to hypothesize that if the eye is so well preserved, and there are all these channels where the blood vessels and the nerves would have gone. I mean, just to give people an idea of scale, we're talking about a 3-mile long mountain, and it's nearly a mile high, you know, or no, it's, what is it? I always get the meters and feet mixed up, but it's basically 750 meters, so roughly 2,700 feet or so. Yeah. So nearly 3,000 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it's by the ocean. Or sea, the Mediterranean Sea. And so, yeah, so then I hypothesized that since that cave was so well preserved, that maybe there was an ear too. And one of the things that I noticed from Google Earth that was another mind blow was that you've got the head, and then you have, like, just like our heads do, that curves in on the sides where the neck would be. And then our ears attach here. So on an elephant that's head is tilted like this, you're going to have the eye in front and the ear behind.
Yeah.
And just like our ears do, elephant ears attach in like a quarter moon shape. And right exactly in the location where the ear would be, there's a quarter moon shape of rock that has broken away. So the outer portion of the rock, which is limestone, is gray. And then everywhere that outer rock has broken away, it's red. Or not red, bright red, but like iron red.
Yeah.
And so that was really fascinating. And that led to a whole bunch of other discoveries that are related to bone and the structure of bone, and things that I cover in the 4th video, which is about histology. So just the fact that on Google Earth there's like an ear attachment is there, you know, right where it should be. That's just one more on the list. So I decided to try and hike up there, and it's at 375 meters, and it's very steep, and to do it properly you would need a harness and ropes. And I was just looking for a trailhead or something that I could explore to see if there even was a cave up there. And in the course of looking for which road I should take up and doing some searches online, I came across a website that said Cova del Migdia, which was the same name as the Barranca that's this canyon, but Cova means cave. And I saw that link and I went, what? There's a cave with the same name? No way, you know. And so I click on the link, and that was when, you know, I literally entered into the twilight zone with this whole study, because not only was there a cave there, but the cave was right in the center of the quarter moon. What are the odds, right? And not only that, but this cave, which I knew nothing about until this initial search, had been excavated and explored in detail by a team of archaeologists who needed harnesses and ropes to get up to it. And they found cave paintings, and they found the remains of bodies in there.
Wow. Really
fascinating. But not only that, they brought in 3D mapping technologies. They did the most thorough forensic analysis of a cave in all of Europe. It was literally the most thoroughly excavated cave in Europe when they did this research.
What did they find? What did they think?
Well, they found bodies. I mean, this is, you know, did they know? Were they sent to do the research, or is it just like, you know, chance occurrence? Are they paradigm blind and they really just believe the basics of what they were studying, which is that it was a cave, and you know, they thought it was a burial site that, you know, people brought their loved ones up there, and you know, there are all these different theories about how the bones were found, but no talk about it potentially being an ear canal of a you know, of a titan elephant that had fallen who knows how long ago.
Yeah.
And so the amazing thing was that their footage was so incredible. They did fly-throughs. They did 3D mapping, so you can see like the 3D layout of the whole caves. but they also did 3D fly-through that you can wear those red-blue glasses for.
Oh wow!
And it's in the opener for. There's a 5-part series on my channel called Unveiling a Titan, where I go through all of this research.
Yeah.
And lay it out. And so that's the third video is on the ear. Yeah. And so in my opener, that's what I was going to say. In the opener to all those videos, if you're wearing 3D glasses, you can see them fly through this thing. So they got better footage of this thing than I ever could have dreamed of myself. So I was able to kind of with thoughts about the inner ear. You know, we have the 3 bones of the inner ear, we have the semicircular canals, and we have the cochlea, which is our balance organism, and it's our hearing organism, or organ, not organism. So the sound enters the ear, and then it goes into the cochlea, and depending on where those frequencies end up stopping and how that stimulates the neurons that are inside of the ear and pushes on the fluid and everything, that's how we hear frequency, and we know whether something is high or low frequency. That's all thanks to this spiral organ that's in the inner ear. Well, as I was watching them go through this cave and literally crawling through it, there's this point in the thing where they're literally curving around a corner, and it looks very much like a spiral. So without having gone up there myself, just looking at their footage, I had another 8 to 10 specific anatomical correlations. The location in relationship to the ear canal going in, the eustachian tube, which is a drainage tube, and potential blood vessels, and you know, it's just like I said, Twilight Zone stuff. So and then I started producing videos, and of course the community that really took to my videos from the beginning, and partially because I had friends that were part of the community, were the crazy flat earthers who are the stupidest people alive, right? Maybe. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Maybe I think the whole is it a sphere, is it flat thing is all part of a Hegelian dialectic. It's divide and conquer, and it's, you know, I don't think it's either. I'm more in alignment with the idea that the Earth is a toroid, that it is just like when we see magnets and we see the way that storms spiral and the way blood flows, the way the heart functions, as above, so below, as within, so without. And I think atoms are the same thing. And there's a scalability and a fractal nature to our reality. And so this makes it easier for me to also buy the idea of a previous age and beings that were the size of mountains, and maybe even an age before that where there was the size of continents. Who knows what this place is and how it's actually structured. I have a lot more knowledge about what it isn't now than what it is, thanks to NASA.
But
so and their hoaxery.
I think
so. Anyway, that was a long. I don't remember what your question was. But
it's just great to get the background and your kind of where your point of inquiry, like you speak of it really well in the videos, and people can go.
I try to be as grounded as possible. Most of the people who are covering this topic are covering it who are Christians, like I said before. They're young Earth believers. They believe in creation. They don't believe in evolution. They have poked tons of holes in evolutionary theory, like what we were taught from Darwin, and their criticisms are often ignored because the assumption is that it's faulty science and that they don't understand what they're talking about, and they're suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect, where they know just enough about something to get themselves into trouble, you know, by having beliefs about things that they really don't know anything about. But when you dig into it more, they're actually the ones who are showing multiple sides of arguments. They're weighing the pluses and the minuses of the different arguments. They're looking at the available research, and they're looking at the different techniques that were used, and is there a scientific foundation to the use of those techniques in order to be able to claim what they're claiming based on those techniques. So I, not being a Christian and not approaching it from that standard, wanted to use the scientific method as much as possible to look at these things, and to look at the nature of stone, and the idea that maybe many of the stones that we see are not just fragments of bigger structures that may have once been titans, but also smaller beings of other ages, or maybe they existed side by side. I have no idea. It's not, not for me to prove one way or another. But that the idea that much of the stones that we're looking at is not geology, but is really biogeology. Yeah. And there's some truth to that even in the mainstream geological model, because they're telling us that biological remains are compressed under the seafloor, which creates sedimentary layering and then eventually metamorphic rock, which then melts and turns into igneous stone and is pushed upward by volcanoes. And we have tectonic activity, which are breaking all these layers apart. And then those pieces are breaking into smaller chunks, which are eroding and giving rise to the rocks that we see on the shorelines and in the river bottoms and all that. And that's how I always looked at those rocks. But that may not be the case. And it may be that people are, not that they're trying to mislead, but they're paradigm blind, and that they have a certain set of beliefs about the nature of rocks, because we've been taught those stories that they claim have long ago been proven. And when you dig into it, a lot of their science is faulty and it's fallacious. So, so then I started to look at the rocks around me, not just the mountain, with different eyes. And I started noticing all kinds of patterns that could not easily be explained by sedimentary layering and gas getting caught in the, the layers, or whatever the explanation, because it was incredibly intricate and detailed. And that was when my study of anatomy and histology kicked in, and I started to realize that there were loads of things that I was seeing in the stones that weren't easily explained by erosion and, breaking off of larger pieces. And that led to the Heartstone research as well, which originally brought you to me, I guess.
Yeah, so that's I was just spending a lot of time on the beach, and just started looking at all these rocks, and my whole house is full of rocks now. But it was really, I looked at them and they all seemed to have, it just occurred to me one day that there is not one rock that's the same as any other rock. And then when I started to look at the different shapes, like if they just all been washed around, they should all just be kind of the same shape. But they all seem to have, like, not only rocks that were of the same material.
Kind of rock. Yeah, the same kind of rock,
Yeah, but lots of them just seemed to be held together because of an inherent essence or intelligence or shape that didn't make sense to them just being kind of flushed.
Had you already been looking into kind of alternative geological stuff? No, this was just an intuitive insight that you had.
Yeah.
See, I think a lot of people have that. I've had a lot of people on my channel say, "Oh, I saw your videos and it's life-changing because I used to have all of these intuitions as a child, and then I was taught to believe that the things that I was seeing and that I recognized as just simple connections between things are impossible and couldn't be true."
Yeah.
And like I was getting into a little bit before about skeletons fossilizing, but we're taught that soft tissue cannot. And it wasn't until I came across the mud fossil idea that I realized, wow, maybe soft tissue can fossil too. What if some of these stones that we're seeing that I've always kind of looked at, wow, how did that happen? Or just was completely oblivious to, and just saw it as a rock that was part of this hundreds of millions of years process. So why geology? Oh, that's boring stuff. I would much rather go into space, or there was a zillion things that I thought was more interesting than looking at ruins or rocks.
Yeah, but then when you looked at the heart stones, you found how many correlations? The anatomical correlation.
Well, that was the next kind of step in the evolution of these ideas that I've been sharing on my channel. Was first, okay, maybe what we think of as geology may actually be biology, but not as pieces of larger ancient structures, but as parts, body parts of things that that lived maybe not so long ago. And so as I started looking around, I was making more connections with the mountain, which I cover in the part 4 and 5 videos. Yeah. But I was also realizing that there were a lot of smaller stones that didn't look at all like eroded versions of the pieces of rocks that I was seeing up, higher on the mountain. Yeah. I was seeing a lot of stones that seemed to be kind of encapsulations within themselves. Mm. But before that, I was watching different channels like Mud Fossil University. There was a guy named Alan from Flat Earth Nation. He, also very staunch Bible believer, and sometimes he's almost like one of these hellfire and damnation kind of preachers, in his approach, which normally I would have just like walked away from entirely and not even given a moment's thought, because I would have been turned off by that it's all this and nothing else approach. But because of the Mud Fossil University, he was also a Christian as well. I was just kind of listening to what they had to say. Does it make any sense? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it made sense, and sometimes it seemed like there were really specific correlations between the things they were showing that went beyond pareidolia. But sometimes it looked like a rock, and they're like saying, oh, it's this, and it's like 100%, it's unequivocal, and you can see the this and that and the other thing. And I'm looking at it going, no, I can't, that doesn't really resonate with me. So then I wanted to find an example of my own that was undeniable, and I literally put out a request to the ether, yeah. To God, to the universe, whatever works for you, to send me something that was undeniable and unequivocal. And 2 or 3 days later, I was walking a river bottom and I found a rock that was like, wow, that's really interesting. And I picked it up, and the more I looked at it, the more I realized this is a heart. But it wasn't the heart of a human, which would be this big, yeah. Right? It's our heart's about the size of our fist. Yeah. It was the heart of something that would have been 4 times that size. So what would that be? I don't know, an elephant or a giraffe, or I didn't know. But what I saw within just a couple of minutes of looking at this rock were 8 or 10 different anatomical correlations. It had openings for the aorta, openings for the pulmonary arteries. It had the marbling. It had a white outer layer. And when you look at hearts, our hearts are wrapped in a fascial sac. So it's called the pericardium. And all of the organs are wrapped in these, but the heart is wrapped in the thickest and toughest of them. Mm. And fascia is the white gristle that you see whenever people cut into meat. And so that surrounds the heart. And I noticed that the whole outer portion of the stone was white, but everywhere that little bits had been rubbed away from the erosion and the bumping, it was revealing red. Mm. And then I started looking and I realized that there were chambers inside. And I was like, this is incredible. And so I took it back and I started looking at the anatomy. And by the time I was done analyzing that rock, there were 15 different anatomical correlations. That's up to 21 or 22 now, as I made additional discoveries later. And I never intended to make a video about that rock or to go into this topic at all. Yeah. What I did instead was I filmed it, and I slowly rotating it, I sent it to Mud Fossil University, and I thought, this guy's going to love this, because I've been watching his channel for a while, and nothing that he showed on his channel had as many specific anatomical correlations and detail as this one stone, which I had, directly compared to the anatomy books. And to my surprise, he didn't make use of it. He wasn't interested, and I couldn't fathom that he couldn't find an interest or a value in it. And so after a while, I was just like, I have to make a video on this. And then after I made the video, I was like, well, using the scientific method, I've got an empirical observation. I've done study and looked into the correlations, but I'm also aware that it could be pareidolia, but what are the odds? And if there's some truth to that, then I should be able to go back and find similar rocks. And so the second video I did on the subject was called Mud Fossils, the Heart of the Matter, Part 2, where I went back into the river where I had found the first rock. In the space of about 10 or 15 minutes, I found another dozen. that had the same features. And these were very specific, and they weren't easily explained through rolling around and erosion. And that was when I first started to realize that, wait a minute, I think a lot of these things that we just call stones and think of as broken pieces of bigger structures are not at all. They are encapsulated pieces, the remains of organs of smaller creatures that died in some kind of a cataclysm that was capable of turning their organs to stone. What was puzzling to me is, where was the rest of the body? At that point, I had no idea how you could have a petrified organ without having the skeleton, which was already hard, or the other parts of the body. And so my videos are all about those kinds of questions and that inquiry, and trying to come to terms with what I was finding empirically in large quantities that seemed to go way beyond random chance, but didn't fit at all in with what we know from the mainstream geological model. And as I started to look into that more and more, I started to find out, oh, maybe all those things that we were taught as fact and unquestionable proof, you know, that that maybe those things haven't actually been proven, and that assumptions have been made, or, you know, there's been actual intention to mislead, so that we don't see what's all around us.
Yeah. I think the way that I kind of connected with the stones at all, I think actually came from the yoga practice, and just standing in mountain pose, Tadasana for the yogis out there. But we would do it in the training. We would do Tadasana for an hour and a half at a time, and it's just like a deep meditation, but very much listening to the innate intelligence of the bones and the skeletal structure, and how so really like getting settled.
And then you reach a point where you're resonating with everything around you, and when you're breathing, it's almost like you are breathing and being breathed, and then you sense that there's a connectedness there, not just with nature as a whole, but I understand where you're at with it, and a lot of people reach those kinds of states through psychedelics as well, where the lines of reality start to be blurred, and they perceive things in a way that we're taught it's not possible. But maybe they're actually just tuned in to the reality of what's happening around them. I'm more in that alignment with that idea now than I would have been years ago when it comes to geology, because I was, Big Bang, coalescing stardust leading to planets and supernova suns, and the periodic table of elements, coming from the heart of suns that have exploded, and now I've been studying a lot of biological transmutation and the different scientific experiments and evidence there is for the idea that both plants and creatures are literally creating elements through biological processes. And we're taught that that's not possible, and yet there's a lot of science that proves unequivocally, in my mind, that it is very possible. And the skeptics would say, oh no, they just did faulty experiments and it's not reproducible or whatever. But there's just way too much out there on this subject. So I think that everything is contained in the part, and the part contains the whole. And we're literally creating all of these different elements as our tissues are being formed. And if that exists on a macro, larger fractal level with titans, then much of the veins and the different things that we mine to get our elements that we use to, in our course of living, those may have just been formed in the hearts of giant creatures or trees and different things. There's some wonderful evidence for that as well. The avatar-like trees.
Actually, as we're speaking now, I'm just considering that the shape of the Earth might be irrelevant when we look at that. It's actually, we're just in a fractal field, in a plasma with electricity in it, And
Yeah.
even like the occurrence of the bones of a titan or petrified organs, they're almost like an intersection point through time and space. When we begin to allow our consciousness to expand, it's like we can actually see something that, if we were to say linear time, would have been a long time ago or not so long ago. But it's more like it brings it into, like, your consciousness brings it into reality.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah, and that gets a little bit into that, what I was alluding to before with the kind of wishy-washy quantum physics philosophy that comes from, we're shaping reality as we're perceiving it. But that, you can go off the deep end with that too, of nothing is real, and it's all me, and it's all my thoughts, and and so that can lead to some undesirable places as well. I think it's a combination of, as above, so below, as within, so without. We are operating in the etheric realm, and we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but we're also physical beings, and anyone who doesn't agree with that can whack themselves in the head with a hammer, and find out that, oh yeah, the real world is also real,
or try to go through a wall. That usually.
Yeah, so there are rules to this realm that we're in, and who knows what's going on in other realms. We may have had past lives. We may be able to explore those realms through psychedelics or meditation or whatnot. But I grew up with astrology, as I mentioned before. My mom was an astrologer, and when I hit 18 in my early 20s, I was really interested in studying it, not just to understand myself, but to understand others, and also understand the flow of time and how that relates to our spiritual fingerprint, which is the natal chart, which is that the position of everything in the heavens at that moment that you take your first breath, which is very different from the horoscopes that are in the magazines of your 12 signs and trying to divide all of humanity into 12 different categories, and you're this or you're that. This is more like an incredibly complex timepiece with 10 different hands or 20 different hands that are all moving at radically different speeds and times. So when you look at that, you're looking at a moment, an encapsulation of a moment in time. And the reason I brought up astrology is because one of the great astrologers from the early 19th century, and he wrote all through, I think he died in the 80s, is a man named Dane Rudyard, who wrote dozens and dozens of books. And in one of those books that I read, he described reality as being a hierarchical series of interpenetrating holes. Not holes as in black hole, but holes as in an encapsulated whole with a W, right? And so hierarchical series, that there's your fractal nature and your vortex and your spirals, and then the whole would be a cell, or it could be an organ, or it could be an individual, or it can be a planet, no matter what your vision of the planet is. And that it's a hierarchical series of interpenetrating holes. So there's this energetic exchange as there's an emanation that's occurring, both thought and heart emanations. The heart has a very powerful electromagnetic field, the most powerful of the body, more powerful than the brain. And it also, as I talk about in a number of my videos, it functions as a toroid. And that was a recent discovery that was made about not only the anatomical structure of the heart. We're taught that it's a 4-chamber pump. It's not. It's a vortexual, toroidal, perpetual motion machine that exists throughout our entire life until we breathe our last breath. And at its center is some form of singularity, and it's capable of love, and that may be where the entire universe emanates from in the first place. But it's also has the duality that is a toroid. If you look at the magnetic field, you have these opposite rotating vortexes. So you have the monad, which is the whole, God, and then you have the dyad, which is polarity and opposition. And this is what all the esoteric writings and teachings go deep into. And I never realized how much this dovetails with the nature of the structure of our realm, and how physics functions and what we know about the physical realm. A great person to study for this is Victor Schauberger, who's the Tesla of water. And I talk about him in the video that I did called Helical Hearts, Petrified Organs and Synchronicities. I talk about the work of a man named Francisco Torrent Guas, who's the greatest cardiologist that ever lived, in my opinion, because he taught us not only about the anatomical structure, which was unknown, that the heart is what it can be unraveled into one flat band.
Yeah.
It's not these 4 different chambers that are contracting at a particular time. It's firing off from the beginning to the end of the band, and the band is rolled up into a knot, which many consider to be the Gordian knot. And he was the one who finally unraveled the Gordian knot and showed the true nature of the structure. But then he also theorized that there was some vortexual spiral that was occurring as the heart was functioning, and that was a theory that later on they were able to prove with imaging. You know, using functional MRI, using radioactive isotopes. There's one experiment where they were able to blow up a heart and then do imaging as it deflated. And they were able to prove and show that the spiral, the heart is actually a spiral vortex. So this is a fact that's still not taught in the schools.
Yeah.
It changes everything about what we know about how our physiology and anatomy are built and function.
Yeah.
And it hasn't even been thoroughly disseminated into the field of cardiology. So it's totally crazy, and that this is, you know, so known by so few. And I think the reason is because it gives us insight into the nature of our physical reality on so many levels. Because when you're really applying the scientific method properly and doing experimentation, what you find is that there are themes of the nature of how things work and function in our reality that carry through from topic to topic to topic, and are usually scalable. So that gets back into this hierarchical series of interpenetrating holes. So and then going back to the organs that, you know, that I was finding.
I was showing
it's gone beyond mind-boggling. It's now become bog-mindling.
It's
the next level, you know.
But that's what I meant when I said about like something appearing in our physical reality. It's like that's where holes intersect. Yeah, it's like a window to a whole other.
I wouldn't be surprised if at the center of every atom in every organ, every toroid, there's a singularity, and that it is itself some kind of a wormhole or a vortex. And maybe this is what they're trying to constantly feed us with sci-fi and Hollywood and warp speed. And when you see, you know, like movies like Doctor Strange, you know, where it's like he's working magic and he's going into these other realms, they're always showing it as these spiral tubes that you're being catapulted down. And that's exactly how the blood flows in our body. And it's, you know, it's completely far out. The number of synchronicities that have happened at every step of the way as I've looked into all of this and gone through this researching. It's just not only the coincidences with the mountain and with the heartstones, but also the synchronicities, many of which I document in my videos, because I've just been sharing my questions and my journey of exploration and the exploration that led me to things and conclusions that I never would have dreamed of or guessed. And
it's amazing to talk to you and to get your whole kind of background perspective and all the foundation of the work. I think if we could, people can go and look at your videos. I know we said maybe we'll do some screen sharing, but maybe we can just have a look at a couple of the stones that I found just for interest, and we can see if Oh, there's so many of them. But I'll just, these are a couple of the...
So had you already gathered these before seeing any of my videos, the ones you're going to show now? Or these ones that you picked after seeing?
Some of them were from before and some of them were after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I focused a little bit more on I started seeing more of the heart-shaped ones once I'd watched your videos. But then, it's like,
this is something I've talked about a number of times. If what I'm suggesting in my videos is true about these heart stones, then you know, how widespread it is, I can't say. I've had a lot of people from all around the world send me both photographs and videos because they've seen my videos and they've spotted these. And sometimes they were stones that they already had that they loved and they had brought home because they just felt a connection to it.
Yeah.
And if it's really a heart, that's really fascinating that they have that.
So here's one sample.
Yeah. And so you held it perfectly. If you just stop right there, right there. Okay. So I was just about to explain that one of the things that we're not taught about stones because of the paradigm that we grow up within is that if petrified organs are an actual thing, and there are actual examples of petrified brain and petrified heart, but we're told that they're incredibly rare, and you know, it's a 1 in a 10 million chance that you would find something like that because soft tissue doesn't fossilize, right? Yeah. But if what I'm showing is true, then you're holding this exactly right, because the heart is in the chest cavity exactly as you're holding it, slightly tilted towards the left lung, right? So the heart has an up, it has a front, and it has a back. And what I found with the rocks, see how the flat is back and slightly curved in? That's exactly what I've shown in a number of my videos. So you can see the fleshiness. If you go back to the front, you've got that's a blood vessel opening. This is an absolutely beautiful specimen you have there. Okay, so go back to the front. So that has a harp shape, which I talk about in the videos. It's tapering in on the bottom. It has a flattened top. It has marbling, which is the fatty outer portion that's on the heart. But you can see the fleshy red. And then as you turn it back towards the side, you have the remains of what are the pulmonary arteries. And then if you show the top, there, okay, it's more just the blackened stone is going to be you've got the red blood, which is iron rich, and then the blue blood, which is lacking iron because the iron binds to oxygen. So the iron, the blue blood is going back to the lungs for oxygenation before being pumped, I say in quotes, out to the rest of the body. And so where you have the iron is lacking, that's going to petrify black. That right. So that is an absolutely beautiful specimen, and then the back side. The interesting thing about the flattened and curved inward backside is that when we die, our hearts go into rigor mortis, just like all of the other the muscles in the body, and that lasts for about 12 hours before the tissue starts to decay, and then eventually goes soft. But there's that hardened point. So I believe, you mentioned plasma before. I believe that there was some kind of a cataclysmic event that involved very, very high energy and maybe very high heat. It could be explained by volcanoes. It could be explained by electric universe theory, of which Thunderbolt's project is a great source for that. They're not flat earthers. They're not talking about toroids. They're talking about everything from an electromagnetic perspective, and they don't buy into the Big Bang Einsteinian NASA universe model of things. But these are very high level scientists that produce high quality work. So the Thunderbolts project, they talk about the electromagnetic nature of the universe. We have what are known as Lichtenberg figures, which are all over the world. Like if you think of the Grand Canyon as the largest of them, if you take two, I guess it's the anode and the cathode electrically, and you put major energy between them, you can arc it like a Tesla coil, and it jumps. But there are also people who are making beautiful tables out of wood, for example, where they hit the two ends of the table with electricity, and then it goes out like a fractal figure and eventually meets. and the longer they run the electricity through it, the deeper and more pronounced that pattern becomes. You know, and then they put a nice finish over it, and you've got the world's most beautiful table. That's exactly how a lot of the canyon and river structures around the world look. You know, they look like root structures, but it's more like the root structures of major electrical plasma events. So I believe that that's what led to the creation of these organs, some kind of an event like that, or perhaps extremely high energy through the form of heat with volcanic activity, burning away the outer portions of the body while the organs themselves are literally boiling in the chest and abdominal cavities.
Look at this one.
Yeah. So there again, that telltale shape. Now that's exhibiting more of the fatty marbling. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. This one.
I know.
Really nice. So you've got your curved underside. So I started to say rigor mortis. When the heart contracts, what we know now about contraction is it's contracting in a spiral.
Yeah.
And that is showing the spiral. Show it from the end. That shows, oh yeah, I'm sure it was just erosion rolling around in the river bottom.
Yeah.
Just happened to create harp-shaped. You've got also the sutures there of what's known as the intraventricular sulcus on my left-hand side, over more to, that line that comes down, when the heart is folded back up, it meets in fibers that have different direction, right? And like that. And that meeting point is known as a sulcus. And that heart is showing the intraventricular sulcus beautifully. It's showing there is some erosion in the form of those holes. You know, if a rock sits in salt water, that salt water will erode and decay the rock in a way that it'll eventually start to make it look almost like a lung because it's filled with so many holes. So seawater will take what was. So that is an unbroken rock. If there was any fracture to that rock at all, you would see it immediately in the form of a flaw that your eye would be drawn to. And that is, there's no fractures on that rock whatsoever. And the other thing that happens is as the heart does the spiral contraction, is the back curves inward. And that's very hard to explain with erosion. And I show video of this. I show 3D animation so that people can see it in my videos. And then if they watch the videos, there's one I did called Petrified Organs, Giants' Hearts, and How to Spot Them, where I teach people all of these different features. Oh, these are awesome.
I know. I won't. I'm gonna let you go shortly, but I'm literally like, I want to show you.
I'm having a great time.
And here's another one, just very different material.
And there again, that inward curve. Another telltale sign, if you turn like that knife edge there, right? Oftentimes you'll find one side has a knife edge and the other side is a little thicker. And that knife edge, if you look at it from the end, you can see that there's so as the heart contracts, the left ventricle is very thick muscle and the right ventricle is thinner muscle. And so that's why you get this tapering in on the sides and you get this spiral. And that's also why you get the knife edge. And then you'll not almost always, but very often at the top, you'll have either holes or indentations or creases or discoloring where the aorta and the vena cava enter the heart. And then on the side, you'll have the openings to the pulmonary arteries. They all have it. I show it time and time again. I go out into the field live. This is not the specificity of this rock and the great degree and number of anatomical correlations. You can't explain this away with random erosion, especially when someone goes down live into a river bottom and pulls out 10 rocks that look just like that one in the course of 10 minutes. Oh, but there's lots of rocks and they look all kinds of different ways. Or maybe there's lots of organs and you have kidneys there and you have spleens and you have other things which are very nondescript, but the heart is extremely descript. It's dense and it's as a muscle, and it has a very powerful protective layering. So it makes sense that it would be the best preserved.
And
yeah, that one's less distinct.
I'd say this would be another organ, like this. I'd say kidney.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
That's actually, I'm in complete agreement with your assessment there. And you see the indentation. Wait, go back. Which side? Turn it to one side. The other side.
Oh yeah.
The other side.
Yeah.
There's an indentation there. Guess what? That's where the artery and the vein enter into kidneys.
Yeah.
And very often, if you find kidney-shaped stones, it's not just an indentation there, but you see the remains of little what were once openings.
Yeah.
I've found brain as well.
Yeah. And I saw, okay, so this is the last one that that I'll show. And I saw a video where they said that the fat of the brain, when it fossilizes, can turn into crystal. I don't know what that is or not.
Yeah, I talk about that in one of my videos.
Yeah.
I think for people who don't have a lot of time, because I mean, I've only got about 12 or 15 videos on my channel, and I think it maybe totals 6 hours of footage or something.
Yeah. So I found this one.
Yeah, liver perhaps, or
so that's the bottom.
I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking
that's the bottom.
Half a brain that's been kind of.
Right.
It's got a bit missing there, but
okay, so the missing part would be where the cerebellum sits. So you have it upside down, in my opinion, if it were brain.
So, but that's I'd say that's the bottom, no? Where the brain stem, no?
No. Okay, so if it's only half of the brain, you're not going to have the brain stem, because that's going to emerge from the central portion. So this is how I see that rock. If you hold it back up with that indentation. Okay, so now go back to exactly how you had it. In that position, I believe that we're looking at the inside of half of the brain, looking out, and then that indentation is where the cerebellum would sit, and then your fingers at the top are on the cerebral cortex. And I show in one of my videos, I show the corpus callosum, and that's where the main blood flow is between the two hemispheres of the brain, is going right through the corpus callosum. You can't see any hint of that on your rock, but on the one I show, it's all crystallized. I theorize that fat in many conditions, when it undergoes rapid petrification, that all forms of fat turn to crystal. And so that's exactly how it would sit. The cerebellum would be under the backside there.
So crystal skulls.
Yeah, those are great.
Well,
fun to see.
Lots of fun, and I'd better let you go.
I just want to say one last thing about the videos. So I've got a lot of videos showing the stones, comparing the anatomy, showing people how to spot these predominant features, comparing different species, because like a giraffe heart looks very different to an elephant heart, completely different shape. Some are 3 chambers, some are 4. So like you said at the very beginning of this conversation, every one is unique and different. The question is, are they all similar? And that's where the syncretism comes into it, like looking at the overlaps. And that's what I've showed in a number of videos. For people who are short on time and just want to get a quick overview, I've done 2 videos, one called Petrified Titans and Organs, Part 1, the discoveries, and then Petrified Titans and Organs, Part 2, the how and why. I was going to do a 3rd version, which was going to touch on cosmology, things like Thunderbolts Project, electric universe theories related to plasma. In Part 2, I cover the theories related to volcanoes and how that could potentially be an explanation. And I talk about how I think that would have led to rapid petrification, and I lay out what I call the boiled egg theory, because I think that's why I think the outer portions of the bodies are being destroyed and then the organs are being found separate from everything else, because in the process of being petrified by whatever mechanism it was, the outer portions of the body are destroyed. That's my theory. I don't have scientific evidence for it. What I do have is what's known as proof based on logical consistency, and that is a form of scientific method that doesn't involve experimentation, but you know, just like when you pick something up and you let it goes towards the earth. We call that gravity. And what they tell us is happening is very likely not what's really happening, but it happens every time. And that's something that you can, you know, experiment with and test. It's harder to do that with stones that are already there, and whatever happened to them already happened. You can break them up, and using things like spectroscopy, which is X-ray fluorescence, you can start to find out what the composite pieces are and what percentages they're there and what atoms are they made of. I want to do that. The lockdowns and COVID and all the madness of the last year kind of got in the way of that, and I lost my momentum, and it took, I went almost a year without producing video, but I'm back on it and doing interviews again, and yeah.
So is that the what's your next step now? Is it more video?
I'm currently working on a part 6 video to the Unveiling of Titan series, because I've made additional discoveries that I didn't show. The 5th video in that series was all about the eyeball and the evidence for the eyeball and the optic nerve. I talked about how fat, I believe, crystallizes into quartz, and there's different kinds of quartz. You can see like a quartz crystal which still has all its, you know, geometry, or quartz can be melted. There's a lot of different ways, but it's always crystalline. And so the 4th video talks about the histology of the mountain and relates it to that. The 5th video is about the eye, and also censorship on the part of Google Earth, which is a very fascinating topic, which I think I prove pretty solidly in that video. And then I've made some new discoveries that I want to share with people about it. So that's what I'm working on now. And another couple videos, and then I'm going to go silent for 2 or 3 months while I finish a book that I've been working on for a long time. That's about something completely unrelated, but it's a project I have to finish before I can really pour myself into other projects that are related to this research and other things that I want to work on and share with people. So we'll see what I can get to. Hopefully, get to all of the things that I'd like to share.
It's been a pleasure to meet you and talk to you.
Likewise.
And great information, and I'll put all the links to your channel in the description, and people can...
Det var jättekul att prata med dig, och vilken överraskning att det blev så. So I said it was very cool to talk with you and to meet you, and it was quite a surprise that there were all these interconnections as well, that you owned a restaurant in my hometown and are Swedish, and I mean, it's like, wow. So that's kind of one of the things, you know, that I believe from a spiritual perspective is the way in which the Creator guides us in different ways is through synchronicity, and we can just brush it off as random chance, or we can like go, wait a minute, should I be paying attention? Is there something to glean from this moment in which, you know, there was a, you know, sammanträffande, which is the, you know, when 2 things occur simultaneously. That's how Swedes call synchronicity. So
sammanträffande.
All right.
The meeting of 2 things.
Yes. Thank you.
So
it was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Bye, Veronica.